Good afternoon. I am Brooklyn District Attorney Ken Thompson, and we're here to talk about a very important case. I first want to identify some of the people who are standing up here with me. First of all, I want to identify William Schaefer. He's the Chief of Investigations here in the Brooklyn DA's office. Next to me is Nicole Chavis. She is the Chief of our Violent Criminal Enterprise Bureau. And next to her is Tara Lenich. She is our Deputy Chief of Special Investigations in VCE. I'm also joined today by First Deputy Police Commissioner Ben Tucker, who's going to say some words here as well. We're also joined by Chief Thomas Patel of the NYPD Organized Crime Control Bureau, and we're joined by FBI Special Agent Richard Frankel, who's in charge of the Criminal Division here in the New York office of the FBI. We're also here with the case agent, the detective who led the way for the NYPD, Detective Jared Lemieux. Now, I'm going to leave it up to Deputy Police Commissioner Tucker to introduce other members from the NYPD. But we're here today because gun violence is literally tearing our country apart. In Brooklyn, far too many people have been victims of gun violence so far this year. And we're determined to do something about the gun violence. So many months ago, my office joined with the NYPD, and we began an investigation into illegal firearm sales right here in Brooklyn. That investigation led us to an individual named Ernest Linnell. He actually sold an undercover agent over 100 guns right here in Brooklyn. 40 caliber weapons, 380 caliber weapons, 9mm. We were determined to get to the source of these guns. And our investigation led us down to the state of Georgia. And it led us to an individual named Mark Henry. What we learned was truly frightening. Henry is a former Delta Airlines employee. He worked with a current Delta employee, Eugene Harvey, who works down in the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport down in Atlanta. Together, those two individuals breached the security at the airport down in Atlanta. They breached the security to smuggle so many firearms, so many guns on planes from Atlanta to New York City. The flights originated in Atlanta and they landed here in New York at John F. Kennedy Airport. They also landed at LaGuardia Airport. Between May 2014 and December 2014, Mark Henry literally took about 20 flights with guns on them, on commercial airliners. We were fortunate that we were able to get all the guns that they tried to put on the streets of Brooklyn. And what I want to do is I just want to show you, and I'm going to go through how this happened. I'm going to walk you through how this happened so it's crystal clear. But what I want to do first is I want to show you one of the guns that Mr. Henry smuggled on a plane. This is an AK-47. This gun can shoot through a car door, can shoot through an apartment door, can shoot through a bulletproof vest. In November, Mr. Henry brought this gun on a Delta commercial airliner to New York. There's also an AR-15, another assault weapon, that he smuggled on the plane. Now, what I want to do is I want to just walk you through in detail, and we're going to answer all your questions about how this happened and how long this has been going on. But in order to do so, I have to go over to the chart. So I'm going to show you.
No mic.
So what we have here is Mark Henry, the former Delta Airlines employee. He worked for Delta between 2007 and 2010. He was a ramp agent or baggage handler. He was fired in 2010. His mother had worked for Delta for many years. She was first with Pan Am before it merged with Delta. So his mother was a longtime employee. They both worked down in Atlanta. What Henry did is he worked with the current Delta employee, Eugene Harvey. Eugene Harvey is currently a ramp agent and a baggage handler down at the airport in Atlanta. Henry would meet with Harvey, sometimes at Harvey's house in Atlanta, and give him guns that Harvey was to smuggle into the airport. Sometimes they met at Henry's mother's house or other locations down in Atlanta. Henry would give Harvey the guns. Now, this is critical. The problem down with this at this airport in Atlanta is that the employees don't have to go through screening. And so when the employees arrive at the airport, they can get into the terminals without going through any screenings. Henry knew that, and so he worked with Harvey. So Henry would give Harvey the guns outside the airport. Harvey would go through. All he had to do was just badge himself in, and he parked in the employee parking lot, badge himself in, and he's in the terminal with the guns. Henry would go through the normal TSA checkpoints like any other passenger with the knapsack that wasn't quite full. So he went in as a standard passenger, but they had a meeting place that they would meet. And it differed in the airport. Sometimes it was in the restroom, sometimes it was at a credit union, but they knew. And so they would meet at the airport. Harvey would find Henry, give him the guns. Henry would take the guns, put it in his knapsack, and then Henry would literally catch a Delta flight to New York. We know that Henry did this on at least 17 occasions between May and December of this year. We also know, based on our investigation, that Henry has been smuggling guns on commercial airliners for years, for at least 5 years. The investigation is ongoing. Now, what I want to do, so he's on the plane like any other passenger with these guns. Now, I want to show you some video from the airport so you can see exactly how this happened. Please direct your attention to this screen. So, on December 10th of this year, at the airport, you're going to see at 7:30, you're going to see Mark Henry. That's him right there, going through the normal TSA checkpoint. He has a knapsack on him that's not full. Now, can you stop it just for a second? Now, this is important. His flight was about 8:15 from Atlanta. But what he did between going through the TSA checkpoint, he and Eugene Harvey sent text messages to each other about the meeting location. And Harvey told Henry, "I'm going upstairs now." Henry said, "I'm coming." So they met in the bathroom of one of the concourse there, and they exchanged the guns. So the next video, the next clip you're going to see, Henry now has the guns in his knapsack, and he's heading to catch the flight to Kennedy. So this is Henry on the left walking towards his flight. He has a knapsack on, and he has a bag in his hand. That's Mark Henry right there. The next clip you're going to see, this is a still photo. Henry is walking to his flight with the guns in his knapsack. Now you're going to see him boarding the flight to JFK. This is Henry coming into view, and he has these, we believe, at least 16 guns in his knapsack with ammunition, with clips. So he's catching his flight at gate A1. So now he's on the plane. Now he arrives at Kennedy Airport that morning at about 10:30. And you see him get off, he's literally getting off the plane at Kennedy Airport. And he has a knapsack on him. And you may say, I can't see the knapsack. You're going to see the next clip. The next clip shows Mark Henry leaving JFK that morning. Right there. Can you just freeze that? That is Mark Henry with the knapsack that he filled with guns down in Atlanta at Kennedy Airport, leaving the airport. That knapsack had 16 guns in it. We can continue. So he walks out of the airport, and once he left the airport, we, as part of our investigation, started to follow him because we knew he was on that flight. Now I want to go back to just this board real quick. So Henry is now in New York City with the guns. He just left Kennedy Airport. His destination is Brooklyn. Mark Henry lives in the Canarsie section of Brooklyn. So does Ernest Linnell. He lives in Canarsie as well. Henry comes to Brooklyn and he gives the guns when he arrives to Ernest Linnell. Ernest Linnell is the guy in Brooklyn who we allege who sold these guns to the undercover agent. You see, Mark Henry is the guy down in Atlanta who gets the guns and brings them on the plane. But he brings them to this guy, Ernest Linnell, who then sells them to our undercover detective. Our undercover detective purchased over 100 guns from Ernest Linnell from his home in Canarsie. And he literally would come out his house and sell his guns right in front of his house and go back upstairs and into his house on 43 occasions right here in Brooklyn between May and December of 2014. Now, what's also interesting is we investigated Ernest Linnell very carefully. And by investigating him, we learned about other folks involved in this conspiracy. One is Grayling Smith. Grayling Smith sold guns to Ernest Linnell as well. Grayling Smith lives in Crown Heights, and he also lives in Snellville, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. Ernest Linnell not only sold weapons to our undercover undercover detective in our case, he sold 9 guns to a guy named Adrian Alleyne. Adrian Alleyne also lives in Canarsie. The 9 guns he got from Linnell, he sold to a separate NYPD undercover detective. But it's key, all of these guns emanated with Mark Henry. And so what we have here in this particular case is an egregious breach of the security down in that airport. Because these employees are not required to go through screening, they were able to bring bag full of guns and bag full of guns through into the terminal and put them on commercial airlines. What's also important to know is that Mark Henry was able to fly all over the country because he had a certain companion pass. He didn't have to pay for his tickets. It's something that they give former employees, and he got it because his mother was a long-standing employee. So he had the ability to take unlimited flights for life all over the world. And so we know that he has traveled not only to New York, but he's also gone to the Dominican Republic. The investigation is ongoing. And so what do we have here? On December 10th, the video that's depicted there, once he came out of the airport, we followed him to his home in Canarsie. He went into his home with the knapsack for a short period, just for a few minutes, and then he came out without the knapsack. We got in his car, we stopped him, and we told him that he was under arrest and we were going to issue a search warrant. We're going to conduct a search warrant at his house. At that point, he said, my son is home, he has nothing to do with it. The guns in my bag are right near the door. I just brought them from Atlanta on the plane. So he made that admission right after we stopped him. We looked into that bag and we found 16 guns that were wrapped up individually in different bags within that bag. We also found 3 other guns in Mr. Henry's car. We also arrested Ernest Linnell, and we searched his home. and we found a gun there. In total, we seized 153 guns as part of this investigation. And those guns were directly traced to Georgia. We have 5 individuals who are in custody. The 5 individuals are Mark Henry, Ernest Lanau, Eugene Harvey, the Delta employee, Adrian Alleyne, and Grayling Smith. We have indicted 4 out of the 5. The only one we have not indicted yet is the Delta employee. He has been charged by federal prosecutors in Atlanta with selling guns and with violating the security at the airport. We intend to also charge him here in Brooklyn. And so this investigation is deeply troubling because not only these guns creating havoc on the streets of Brooklyn throughout the country, but now this scheme really poses a threat in terms of terrorism. They could put guns on a plane this time. They could have easily put a bomb on one of those planes. And so we're not trying to alarm anyone. We have worked very carefully with our partners in Atlanta, our federal partners. The TSA has been outstanding. The federal air marshals have been helpful. The U.S. Attorney's Office down there, the FBI has been involved. Delta has been so cooperative from beginning to end. Once we learned that Mark Henry was involved in guns, we didn't know for sure that he was transporting guns on a plane until we caught him on December 10th. But Delta would let us know every time he was flying. And so they were crucial in this investigation. And so I want to tell you that we are determined. This is an example that we are not just going to buy guns on the streets of Brooklyn and call it a day. That we intend to trace down the source of these guns, no matter where it takes us. If it takes us to Atlanta, that's where we're going. Because we've got to do more to stop these guns. And I hope that now we will do all we can to make sure that no one can ever get into an airport, whether they work for the airport or not, without being screened. And so right now I'm going to turn it over to First Deputy Police Commissioner Ben Tucker to speak to you about the valuable role that the NYPD played here. And I just want to make it clear, we could not have done this case had it not been for the bravery of the NYPD detectives who put their lives on the line to buy these guns and to work hand in hand with the NYPD. Deputy Police Commissioner, I just want to thank you for all the work that the NYPD did on this case. Thank you, sir.
So before I begin, I'm just going to ask Chief Purtell to introduce the rest of our team. You met Jared, but Tommy, if you would, then I'll start.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Mr. Thompson, Commissioner Tucker. This investigation was run by Captain Brian Gill, CEO of the Firearms Suppression Division. Captain Van Houten supervised the Brooklyn investigation aspect of it. Lieutenant Jennings and the case detective, Jared Lemieux. I also want to point this out that obviously the undercover is not with us, but the presence of these firearms really underscores, especially what happened over the weekend, underscores the risks that our undercovers take to facilitate these results. I also want to say too that in referencing these 4 suspects, in particular Mr. Henry, that we know that his gun smuggling went back to 1991. This person literally has facilitated genocide on the Brooklyn streets. There's no other way to describe that.
This was a 7-month gun trafficking investigation, and as you heard, 5 individuals now in custody, 150 guns were recovered. And this marks the 2nd major firearm seizure conducted by the NYPD in conjunction with the Brooklyn DA's office this year. As you may recall, in April of this year, Police Commissioner Bratton and District Attorney Thompson announced the arrest and indictments of 6 firearm traffickers who were responsible for trafficking another group of about 150 guns, also from Georgia up to New York City, purchased by our undercovers.
So let me just say this. We have worked very closely with the federal officials who are responsible for keeping us safe at the airports. We could not ask TSA, the FBI, the federal air marshals, and Delta to do more than what they've done. And so I think that we could do better, but I don't think there's a need for people to be alarmed. I think that this is a wake-up call that we have to shore up every aspect of our airports, not just for passengers, but for employees.